Bates, at 17 years old, was abducted by James Patterson Smith and imprisoned for more than 4 weeks. James tormented Kelly by ripping out her eyes, among other things, during the month he held her captive. Eventually, he had her drown in a bathtub. Despite Smith's violent past, which included torturing his ex-partner, a jury found him guilty of murdering Bates. On November 19, 1997, he was given a life sentence. James Smith's wife left him after 10 years of marriage owing to his violent behavior. His second child was born through his connection with Tina Watson, a 20-year-old he met at a bar. Watson said that Smith hit her in the head with an ashtray every day, in addition to punching and kicking her. In 1982, Wilson left for good, and shortly after began dating Wendy Mottershed, then 15 years old. Even Mottershed was not safe from his violence. He once tried to drown her by holding her head underwater. Kelly Bates was only 14 when Smith first started preparing her for marriage. When she was a babysitter, he met her. Bates moved in with Smith at his Furnival Road house 2 years later. Smith's mom said she was always worried about her daughter being around him. Although Bates left for a while, he was back in town by November of 1995. Kelly's parents found bruises on her before she went, but she claimed they were accidental. Kelly quit her job and stopped communicating with her parents by December 1995. Smith reportedly contacted the police on April 16, 1996, and said that he had killed his fiancée after an altercation they had while she was in the bathtub. He said he was trying to resuscitate Kelly when she suddenly collapsed and began to choke on water. Kelly was found by authorities partially undressed on a bed. The house was covered in blood when police arrived. At this moment, Smith was taken into custody. When Bates was autopsied, doctors counted 150 individual wounds. Among those wounds were partial scalping, facial and bodily mutilation, including removal of hair from the eyebrows, nose, mouth, lips, and genitalia. Kelly's eyes were ripped from her skull. Injury to the eye sockets consistent with stab wounds. Broken arm. Cuts from sharp objects like spoons, knives, and scissors. Both of his hands were squished. Marks left by a hot iron on the thigh. Inside the mouth, stab wounds. Burns on the buttocks and the left leg. Pruning shear puncture wounds and other injuries. Kelly's hair had been fastened to a radiator and various pieces of furniture for the preceding month while Smith held her captive. Additionally, he used a ligature to bind the girl's hands behind her back. Kelly's eyes were removed for at least 5 days, according to the doctor, but it's likely that this terrible crime occurred soon after the torture began. She had gone several days without drinking water, according to the post-mortem results. Smith said he had no involvement in Bates' death. "The defendant would put me through hell twisting me up," he testified before the court. He said that Bates often blamed him for her own injuries after hurting herself while taunting him over his deceased mother. He denied the findings of the autopsy by claiming that Kelly had dared him to gouge her eyes out, so he did. His story did not convince the jury. The jury reached its verdict of guilty in less than an hour, determining that the defendant was responsible for the death of Kelly and Bates. Smith was given a life sentence without the possibility of release, per Justice Sachs's recommendation.